I've always believed that betrayal doesn't arrive with fanfare. Creeps in through the small moments. A glance that lingers too long elsewhere. A chair that's not pulled out for you. A joke you weren't invited to laugh at. People think it's the loud betrayals that break a man. They're wrong. It's the quiet ones. The ones that look like dinner. That night in the Chicago suburbs, I wasn't walking into a war. I was walking into a house where the war had already ended, and I was the only one who hadn't realized I'd lost. Laura had said it would be small. Just Kyle, his aunt and uncle, and maybe his cousin. She told me casually, like it was an afterthought. She didn't mention it was his birthday. She didn't say there'd be cake. Or gifts. She didn't tell me that they'd all be there early, already halfway through the roast by the time I opened the front door. I remember the driveway. Her sister's car. Kyle's SUV. The same one he once screamed at her to co-sign for. She didn't. I did. I parked behind it anyway. There was no welcome. No porch light flicked on. No one watching through the curtains to see if we'd arrive together. That should have told me something. But I still walked in. I still believed I had a seat at the table. The house was filled with warmth. Food. Laughter. Music humming low through a Bluetooth speaker I once bought for a Father's Day. No one remembered again the next year. Kyle sat at the head. His aunt to his right, cousin across from him. Laura sat between them, wine in hand, her laugh small and bright and perfectly placed. I stepped into the dining room like a stranger. I wasn't introduced. No one paused the conversation. They didn't look up. It wasn't cold. It was worse than that. It was nothing. Not rejection. Indifference. I stood there for a full 10 seconds, waiting. For Laura to say something. For Kyle to greet me. For someone to look up and acknowledge the man who'd paid Kyle's tuition, who'd fixed the roof on this very house when the leak ruined the ceiling above the stove. I'd patched it myself while Laura made calls in the living room. Her voice soft, just loud enough to make sure Kyle never had to help. No one moved. No one shifted their chairs to make space. The only open seat was half blocked by a box of wine glasses that hadn't been unpacked. I pulled the chair out myself. Saturday. My plate was empty. The roast already carved. The vegetables cooling in their serving dishes. Laura poured wine for Kyle, but not for me. Not until I reached for the bottle and did it myself. She didn't stop me. She didn't even look. That's when I noticed it, the wall. Photos. Dozens of them, Kyle as a baby, Kyle at prom, Kyle in his cap and gown. Laura beside him in most of them. Todd in a few, smiling like a man who'd never paid child support on time, who'd shown up for birthdays but not the years in between. And me? 2 photos. One of me holding a wrench in the garage, face half turned. The other one, our wedding. Cropped tight, like they couldn't figure out how to keep me in the frame without making Kyle look like a guest at his own mother's second chance. Kyle saw me looking. He stood. No warning. No words. He walked to the wall, lifted a frame, the wedding photo, and turned it over. The back popped off, nails clinking onto the floor. He pulled the picture out, let it fall. The glass cracked when it hit the tile. Then the garage photo. Same treatment. And then he spoke. Not a whisper. Not a joke. His voice was sharp, proud, and venomous. You're a parasite, living off us. It hit harder than it should have. Harder than it would have if he'd screamed. Because he didn't. He said it like it was fact. Like it was something everyone had always known. No one argued. Not Laura. Not her sister. Not the cousin I'd once helped move out of his apartment when he got kicked out for not paying rent. No one said a word. The silence afterward felt rehearsed. I looked at Laura. She looked away. She didn't flinch. Didn't open her mouth. Just tilted her wine glass and took a long sip like the man she'd promised forever to hadn't just been gutted in front of the people who used to call him family. And that was it. That was the moment. I'd spent 10 years thinking I was building something. A life. A legacy. I worked 2 jobs some months just to keep Kyle in school and Laura from having to go back to the office she hated. I missed vacations. Skipped birthdays of my own friends. I gave and gave and gave. But this wasn't rejection. This was deletion. I wasn't even there to be hated. I was just in the way. I don't remember what I ate that night. I don't remember if I even touched the roast. I don't remember how the rest of the evening went. If there was cake, or if someone eventually tried to make small talk, or if Laura ever looked at me again before we left. What I remember is the sound of the frame breaking, and the way Kyle smiled after. That smile. It wasn't cruel. It was victorious. Like he'd finally said the thing he'd been waiting years to say, and now everyone knew it, that I didn't belong, that I never had, that every check, every car repair, every scraped-together tuition payment was just the pathetic attempt of a man buying a seat at a table that was never meant for him. And I knew, deep in my chest, in that place where pain settles into something colder, I knew I wasn't just being ignored. I was already gone, written off. They just hadn't told me yet. But Kyle had. He told me loud and clear. And Laura, her silence was worse than his words. Because his hatred, at least, was honest. Hers? It was a mask. And that mask slipped the second she turned her head away from me and laughed at something her sister said. Like the man she shared a bed with didn't exist in the room. Like I was the help. Like I was the ghost. I stared at the table. At the fine china we only used for guests. I had bought it years ago on a work bonus. I remember thinking, this will make dinners feel like something special. But now, I was eating off the remnants of a life I hadn't built. Just funded. And no amount of money could buy me back into it. I didn't say a word in the car. Laura didn't ask. We drove in silence, the radio off, the night pressing against the windshield like it wanted in. Her hands stayed on the wheel, eyes fixed ahead. The kind of silence between us that wasn't born of argument, but understanding. We both knew what happened at that dinner. She just didn't care enough to talk about it. The driveway looked the same as always. The porch light flicked on like it had every night for the last 10 years. The motion sensor still worked. I remember thinking how strange that was, how the little machines in your life can keep doing their job long after people stop doing theirs. She got out first. I stayed in the car, watching her walk up the steps. She didn't turn around. The door closed behind her. I sat there in the dark. Still, breathing shallow, heart not broken, just stilled. Because the truth is, you don't feel heartbreak when it finally happens. You feel peace. Terrible, quiet peace. The kind that settles into your bones like dust in an old attic. The kind that whispers, this is it. It's over. You've been holding on to a rope that's already been cut. I walked in 20 minutes later. The lights were on. She was in the bedroom, brushing her hair, like it was just another night. I watched her through the doorway, her reflection caught in the mirror. The same woman I'd carried for a decade, paid her debts, kept her son fed, held her through migraines, through layoffs, through holidays where Todd didn't show up and Kyle locked himself in his room. She caught my eyes in the mirror. Didn't speak. Neither did I. I closed the door and went downstairs. My office was dark. A single lamp in the corner. A stack of bills on the desk, still unopened. I sat down slowly, every muscle aching like I'd just run a marathon. But I hadn't moved. I'd just been erased. That's when I opened the safe. Combination lock. Still the old numbers. The date of Kyle's graduation. I laughed when I realized that. I pulled out the manila folders. Documents. Bank account statements. Deeds. Tax returns. Receipts from the last 10 years, all filed, all organized. Because when you're the one who provides, you don't get the luxury of chaos. You keep records. You build your case quietly, without knowing you'll need it one day. I pulled the laptop toward me. Logged in. Bank account, joint, of course. The same one I deposited into every month. Her name first. Mine second. I transferred half out. Not all. Just half. Fair. Clean. No drama. A silent split. Then the credit cards. I went through them one by one. Removed her name from mine. Called the companies, waited on hold. Gave them the right phrases. Pending divorce. Financial separation. Fraud prevention. They didn't ask questions. Just followed protocol. The cold efficiency of a system that doesn't care why. Only that you finally asked. Next, the tuition autopay. Kyle's university had been taking their pound of flesh every month like clockwork. Tuition. Housing. Meal plan. A quiet pipeline from my checking account to the life of a young man who had just called me a parasite. I canceled it, logged into the portal, disabled autopay, deleted the saved account, removed myself as parent/guardian. It asked me if I was sure. I clicked yes, and that was that. One click to erase a decade of sacrifice. Then came the car note. Kyle's SUV. The same one he drove to that dinner like a king returning to court. Title still in my name. Monthly payments mine. Insurance mine. Maintenance? Yes. I disabled the payment schedule. Called the insurance provider. Explained the change. They asked if the primary driver had changed. Yes, I said. It's not my vehicle anymore. They told me he'd have to reapply for insurance under his own name. I nodded. Let him. And then I opened a new account. Personal one. Separate. No shared access. No beneficiary listed. Just my name, my control. I moved my paycheck routing. Cut the cord clean. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because I was angry. Because I was done pretending. Laura didn't ask why. She never knocked. I think she knew. But knowing isn't the same as caring. The next day, I packed a bag. One duffel. A few changes of clothes. My laptop. The folders. I waited until she left for work. Kyle was still at his apartment near campus, or maybe with friends. He didn't live here full-time anymore. But somehow, the house still bent itself around him like he was the sun we all orbited. But not me. Not anymore. I walked through the house one last time. The kitchen I renovated. The stairs I replaced. The bathroom I retiled after the mold crept up behind the drywall and no one noticed but me. Every inch of this place had my hands in it. My money, my sweat, my care. But my presence? Erased. So I walked out the door. Locked it behind me. Didn't leave a note. I drove to a small apartment complex closer to my job. Nothing fancy. One bedroom. A view of the parking lot and a liquor store across the street. But it was mine. No framed photos on the wall. No echoes of Kyle's footsteps overhead. No wine glasses I wasn't invited to drink from. Just space. Just silence. I didn't tell anyone. No message to Laura. No calls to explain. No social media posts. No declarations. Let them wonder. Let them realize the weight of what just left their lives. Because here's what no one tells you. When you remove yourself from a house, it doesn't fall apart instantly. Creaks. Slowly. Quietly. Like a beam buckling beneath too many years of weight it wasn't built to carry. But eventually it gives. That's when they'll notice. When the tuition bill arrives with no payment. When the insurance lapses. When the credit cards get declined. When the little systems, the ones you built, maintained, protected, begin to fail. They won't see it all at once. They'll feel it like a slow unraveling. And they'll look around, confused. Because they never saw you working the gears. They only saw the results. That first week in the apartment, I slept like the dead. No midnight footsteps. No creaking floorboards. No voices whispering outside the guest room door. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional siren outside. Freedom sounds like a warning sometimes. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. They would call. Eventually. But I was done explaining. I had made my quiet exit. No scene. No shouting match. No last-ditch monologue. Just the final breath of a man stepping out of the fire he spent a decade feeding. Because support is not the same as love. And when support becomes expectation, obligation, entitlement, it's no longer generosity. The servitude. And I had just walked off the plantation. Now let them stand in the silence. Let them feel the absence. Let them explain to each other why the man they erased stopped showing up. Because that dinner was the final straw. But this was my decision. And I made it in silence. Like a man leaving his own funeral. I didn't leave the apartment for 3 days. Didn't unpack either. The bag sat by the door, untouched. The clothes inside still folded. Still smelling faintly of the cedar drawers I built into our bedroom with my own hands. There were no hangers in the closet. No shelves lined with framed smiles. Just blank white walls and silence that buzzed like a held breath. It didn't feel like freedom. Not yet. It felt like suspension. Like being held between two lives, neither one eager to claim me. But I wasn't eager to return. On the fourth morning, I turned my phone off. Not airplane mode. Not silent. Off. Completely. I held the power button down and watched the screen fade to black. The same way Kyle's voice had drained me. The same way Laura's silence had taken the last light from our house. For 7 days, I let the world talk to a dead line. I didn't check emails. I didn't look at my bank balance. I didn't scroll through photos or reread old texts trying to find a version of her that would fight for me. There was nothing to find. The messages would come. Sure. Panic, guilt, bargaining, but I didn't care. I'd given them every version of myself. The working man, the provider, the forgiving one, the patient one. The one who came home after Kyle's tantrums and still paid for his next semester. The one who let Laura say, "He's just acting out," after the boy she raised tore my photos off the walls I painted. Now, they could talk to a black screen. It was the only thing that finally listened. I slept on the couch most nights. Not because the bed wasn't comfortable, but because it was too big for one man. I didn't want comfort. I wanted honesty. I wanted to feel the shape of absence. I wanted to sit inside it and taste what they would soon feel. Not just missing someone, but depending on someone who no longer owed you anything. On the 5th day, I walked down to the leasing office. I signed a 6-month lease. Month to month after that, the woman at the desk asked if I wanted to add a second occupant to the file. I laughed. Sharp. Short. She didn't ask again. On the 6th day, I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder labeled Kyle Support, Receipts, Tuition Confirmations, Rent Payments, Grocery Reimbursements, Flights Home for Holidays. Thousands upon thousands of dollars moved silently from my accounts to his life, like water through pipes in the walls. Necessary, invisible, unappreciated until it stopped. I added one more file, a note, dated and signed. All support has ended. No further obligations. This is the cost of erasure. I didn't print it, but I kept it. On the 7th day, I turned the phone back on. Not out of curiosity, out of ritual. 7 days of silence. A week of burial. Now, like Lazarus, the line could rise, but what it found waiting would not be salvation. The screen lit up. Messages flooded in. Dozens of them. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts from Laura, from Kyle, from her sister, even a few from numbers I didn't recognize, maybe friends of the family, maybe mutual acquaintances, maybe vultures who'd heard about the scene at dinner and come circling for blood. I didn't answer, but I read them all. The first wave was fury. Where are you? This is immature. You embarrassed us. You made a scene. Scene? I hadn't said a word at dinner. I hadn't flipped the table. I hadn't shouted. Kyle had done the humiliating. I had just watched. And left. But that's the thing about people who depend on your silence. The moment you make them sit in it, they scream. The second wave came 2 days later. Can we talk? Kyle didn't mean it. He was just emotional. You overreacted. There it was. Not apology. Revision. Kyle hadn't insulted me. I had misheard. Laura hadn't looked away. She had been shocked. The room hadn't gone silent. It had been respectful. The shattered frames, the erased photos, the word Parasite tossed into the air like a glass of wine tipped in clumsy celebration. All of it, apparently, was misunderstanding. They didn't want to say sorry. They wanted to rewrite history before it cost them anything. But history doesn't care about their memory. It lives in mine. The third wave hit by the end of the week. And this one reeked of fear. The tuition is overdue. Kyle just got a notice from the registrar. They're going to suspend him. The landlord wants rent. We need to talk, please. Now the mask had slipped. No more family games. No more moral high ground. Just numbers, deadlines, pressure. Suddenly, my disappearance wasn't personal. It was structural. I hadn't left them. I had let them see what leaving really looks like. One message stood out. From Laura. Just 3 words. Please. We're family. I stared at it for a long time. 3 words. So soft. So careful. So dishonest. Because family was never invoked when I was paying the bills. It was only spoken now that the man they erased was gone, and the world expected them to make good on promises they never intended to keep. Family wasn't the word Kyle used at dinner. Family wasn't what Laura defended when she let him speak it. Family was a currency they spent when they were broke. And now that the account was empty, they wanted to deposit sentiment. But I had closed the account. I wrote a single response. One I never sent. At what exact moment did I stop being family and start being a parasite? I let it sit in drafts, just to look at it, just to hold it in my hands like a blade I chose not to swing. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about power. It was about peace. My peace. The kind I never had when Kyle stomped through the house I maintained like it was a hotel he hated. The kind I never had when Laura looked at me with that tired half-smile. The one that always said, "I know it's unfair, but please, just let it go." I wasn't angry. I was finally clear. Let them rage. Let them panic. Let them drown in the silence they had always demanded from me. The silence of a man who never asked to be repaid, never demanded gratitude, never held their failures up to the light. Until now. Until the man they called nobody disappeared and took everything with him. This was not a punishment. This was equilibrium. They had built their lives on a foundation they refused to name. Now it was gone. And they would learn what it means when the house starts to shift, inch by inch, crack by crack, until the roof caves in. Let them call. Let them beg. Let them say please and family, and just talk to us. But I wouldn't answer. Because for the first time in years my phone wasn't a leash. It was a witness. And it was watching them finally feel what I had carried in silence all along. I chose the location carefully. Not the house. Not a restaurant. Not neutral ground. My attorney's office. Downtown. Glass walls, hard chairs, beige carpet that doesn't pretend to feel like home. A place where emotion doesn't matter. Only paperwork, signatures, and documented truth. I didn't invite them there for drama. I brought them there to take back the narrative. Quietly, officially, unforgivably. Laura was the first to arrive. She wore the same jacket she used to wear on church Sundays. Gray, pressed, something close to respectable. Her eyes were red. I don't know if she'd been crying, or if she was just tired of pretending she hadn't. She sat across from me without a word. 5 minutes later, Kyle walked in. His hair was messy, his shirt half-tucked, the look of a man trying to hold together an image that had already crumbled. He didn't make eye contact. Not with me, not with her. The attorney came in last. Neutral, uninvested, just here to witness. That was the point. Kyle started first. "Look," he said, voice low, controlled. "I shouldn't have said what I said. At dinner." He didn't say the word. Parasite. He didn't say not my father. He just circled around it like a man walking past a grave he doesn't want to admit he dug. Laura jumped in. It was a bad night. Emotions were high. He didn't mean any of it. He was just upset. I opened the folder in front of me. No words, just paper, stacks of them, receipts, bank statements, tuition payments, grocery bills from the year Kyle moved out and still used our address for Instacart, flight itineraries for his study abroad trip, insurance policies with my name on the line marked payer, screenshots of Venmo transfers, rent, utility shares, book fees, printouts of old texts. "Thanks for the help this month. I'll pay you back. Can you cover tuition until Dad sends his part? Car's dead again. Can you Venmo?" Never once was the money refused. Never once was it treated like charity. It was expected. Kyle's eyes scanned the stack like he didn't recognize any of it. Laura stared at the table. The attorney didn't blink. I spoke for the first time. "You called me a parasite. That means someone who feeds off another without giving back. I just wanted to show you who's been feeding whom." No one replied. I turned the page. "Here's the mortgage. I've covered 87% of payments since the refinance. Here's Kyle's tuition every semester for 3 years. Here's the car note. Here's the insurance. Here's the total. I slid a page across the table. It wasn't about the number. It was about the fact they never bothered to calculate it. Kyle looked at it and winced. Laura reached for it, then pulled her hand back. I'm not asking for repayment, I said. Kyle let out a breath, like he thought that was mercy. I wasn't finished. I'm not here to forgive either. I'm here to make sure none of this gets rewritten. Laura looked up. What do you mean? I leaned back. I mean, this doesn't become one of those stories you tell at holidays. The kind where you say I got my feelings hurt and stormed out. The kind where Kyle's words get softened over time until they were just a misunderstanding. I'm making a record. A clear one. Kyle's voice cracked. I said I was sorry. You didn't say sorry, I replied. You said you shouldn't have said it. There's a difference. He fell silent again. I turned to Laura. You raised a son who could look me in the eye, after years of sacrifice, and strip me of everything with one sentence. And when he did it, you said nothing. That silence wasn't neutral. It was a verdict. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I waited. She finally whispered, I didn't know what to say. Then you should have said anything, I said. You should have said, stop. Or, that's wrong. Or even, not here. But you looked away. That told me everything I needed to know. The attorney remained still. He didn't interrupt. That's why I'd brought him. Not for legal counsel, but to bear witness. Because some truths need to be spoken in front of someone who'll write them down, seal them, and file them forever. Kyle's hands trembled slightly. He tried again. I know I messed up, but cutting me off like that, freezing my tuition, canceling rent, that wasn't fair. I raised my eyebrows. Fair. He nodded. You didn't even give me a chance to fix it. I slid another page forward. June 2nd, 2017. You told me, and I quote, You're not my real dad. You don't get to make decisions for me. You were 18. Adult. But I still paid for your move-in. Your deposit. Your books. Another page. August 12th, 2019. You texted me that Todd, your real father, was going to start helping out. He never did. But I kept paying. Another page. December 23rd, 2020. Christmas. You refused to come home because I asked you to help shovel the driveway. You told your mother, I'm not coming to do chores for some guy who's not even family. Kyle looked down. Laura whispered, I didn't know he said that. I looked at her. That's the problem. You didn't want to know. I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice calm. I didn't cut you off because of one dinner. I cut you off because that dinner was the final chapter in a story I've been reading with my eyes shut for years. And that night I opened them. Kyle shifted in his seat. You always made me feel like I owed you something. I smiled. Cold. Small. You did. He blinked. You owed me respect. He said nothing. I turned to Laura again. Support is not the same as obligation. I gave because I wanted to build something. I believed that if I kept showing up, eventually the walls would come down. But I see now the walls weren't meant to come down. They were there to keep me out. She looked like she wanted to cry, but I was done mistaking tears for truth. I stood. The attorney cleared his throat. There will be no financial restitution requested, he said, reading from the notes. Mr. Holman is not seeking damages. Only a verbal acknowledgement of financial contributions made over the course of the relationship. Kyle didn't move. Laura whispered, I acknowledge it. I waited. Kyle finally nodded. Mumbled it. Yeah, I get it. You paid for a lot. I never said thank you. I should have. I looked at him, not through him, at him. And for the first time I saw it. Not regret. Fear. Not sorrow. Self-preservation. He wasn't sorry for what he'd said. He was sorry I'd finally acted on it. I nodded once. I don't need thanks. I don't need family. I need distance. From now on, I'll be exactly who you said I was. Not your father. Not your provider. Not part of your story. I turned to Laura. That goes for both of you. She reached for my arm as I passed. I didn't stop, because that wasn't a conversation. That was a reckoning. And for the first time in years, I walked out of a room without wondering what they'd think. Because I finally knew what I thought of myself. And that mattered more